So good evening once again. So I am Jyoti. I have been working with cybersecurity for the past 25 plus years. I was part of Tata Consultancy Services for around 24 years. Now I am a freelance consultant come trainer. So I am leading the GCA learning and I work with GCA and I am part of this MOU that we discussed with UPES. And I'm very happy to be here today to speak to all of you, to discuss with all of you, to get your inputs at the end of the session on each of the days to look at how this program can be strengthened further. So with that, maybe we will go into the sessions. So we will start with the first program today, the module 1 is actually the cybersecurity foundations and the emerging threat landscape. So we all know about cybersecurity, importance of cybersecurity. We know about the different types of issues that people face, the challenges that people have, and these the fraud issues that keep coming. And nowadays, every mobile service provider provides us a ringback tone saying that don't depend on these, don't fall for these type of fraud calls. And everybody keeps saying, all these banks and everywhere we log in, they keep saying that there are phishing attempts. Nobody asks you to give OTP. So things are changing. It is an ever evolving state. Like Dr. Bahel said, about what government is looking at, what are the various things that we have to focus, and also what Dr. Chalaboina said, that computer science itself is evolving on a day-to-day basis, and cybersecurity is evolving even more faster and more in a more dangerous manner. A lot of things keep changing and we will never know when something gets outdated. Some patches are waiting, we have to update our system. Some new threats have come in which we have not heard about. So the importance of understanding the foundation and looking at each of the changes, each of the new technology with a risk mindset is what we have to cultivate. We have to look at what are the benefits from this new technology. Along with the benefit, we have to look at what are the risks that we are opening up by getting involved or subscribing to these new landscape technologies. So that is what we will be looking at in our session today. So the learning outcomes for today is...
Jyoti, your screen is not moving. If you could, number one, do it on slideshow. We were still at the first screen. So if you could just go to screen number 2, which is the module 1. We could not even do that, right? So I think you may have to just share once again and then restart.
Thank you, Rupali. I didn't know it was not going. I just actually
Yes, now it's visible. Now if you could do, yeah, this is great. Thank you so much, Jyoti.
Okay, thanks. So I was just explaining about the emerging threat landscape. So we will look at, now have I come to the second slide? Learning outcomes?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So at the end of this session, what we are expecting is for us to understand the key cybersecurity concepts, identify the different types of threats and attack methodologies, and also to know about the major security frameworks and their importance. So suppose we are coming out with a startup organization, or we are planning to do some project. So what are the major frameworks that we have to implement, and what are the importance, and how do we decide which framework we have to look at? And when we talk about the changing threat landscape, what we always hear about is the artificial intelligence, the impact of artificial intelligence on cybersecurity. cybersecurity and artificial intelligence are like two-way connected. There is AI or AI supports cybersecurity module in doing a lot of things, and cybersecurity has to be embedded into all those AI modules. So it is actually a two-way connection or a communication. And we also are looking at zero trust architecture and all in cybersecurity, by which every user, every access, every data request has to be verified before the access is given or before the processing ability is provided. So zero trust, as the name says that everybody has to be verified. So by the end of today's session, we would have gone through all these things. We will have some question answer sessions where you can add your observations or some points that you want to add, or if there are any questions, we can take it up at the end of the session. So
Jyoti, just one more point. Sorry to interrupt. There's a small pop-up at the bottom. If you can just click hide there, it will go away. Thank you.
Thanks. So introduction to cybersecurity. When we talk about cybersecurity, I think all of us know about CIA, right? Confidentiality, integrity, availability. So what is confidentiality, integrity, availability, and how we have to ensure that in the application, in the infrastructure, in the enterprise, in the organization, how we are managing the CIA of all the data, all the assets that we are dealing with, or we are using it for our day-to-day operations. So cybersecurity is actually the processes, the practices, the technologies that are being used, the procedures that are being used at each of the level, like standard operating procedures, the SOPs that we call as, or playbooks, right? So the documentation that is required for every step of activity that we have to go through. And using these practices, how do we protect the computers, the servers, the networks, the data from the cyber threats? Cyber threats like hacking, cyber threats like stealing of data, cyber threats like losing integrity of data, or allowing a hacker to come and modify the data, right? Or making the malicious player impact the availability of data or infrastructure, or ensure like there is something like a system outage, right? Or lack of data, or data availability, backup is not available. So we have to ensure that we have processes in place to protect all our system components, all our data, all the information from cyber threats. And cybersecurity addresses things like network security, data security or information security, and application security, and even operational security. So network security, if we talk about, we will all remember the times of remote working, the pandemic time. So every organization had to allow people to work from home over internet. So how do you ensure the connectivity, the network connectivity is secure? What are the various mechanisms to do that? And how do you ensure that the information that we process, the data that we store, the data from our downstream application and the process data which go to the upstream application, how they can be secured, how they can be secured from unauthorized modification or unauthorized deletion, right? So information security and application security. How do you ensure the access controls are given at a proper level? How do you ensure that data modification or application usage is given as per the role of a user? That is application security. Now, operational security is we will have the business goals of an organization defined, and in that business goals, the operations of different departments, different portfolios, different teams will be defined. So how do we embed security into the business operations of every department, every domains of a business, of an organization, comes in operational security. So when we look into introduction to cybersecurity, we will look at all these aspects: network security, information security, application security, and operational security. Going forward, why is it important? That's what we were talking about, right? We all know security is important. I don't want my bank account to reflect a balance which is less than the actual balance. I want it to be correct, right? I don't want it to reflect something more than what I have also. Because if something comes where I don't know the source of the money coming in, then I will be accountable, right? So we will know that every aspect of life, cybersecurity is important, and we have to ensure that data is managed or access to data is given in a proper, diligent manner, and data is managed without any unauthorized access or unauthorized modification, right? So it is for protecting sensitive information. It can be related to individual, which we call as personally identifiable information. The most important information as per the regulations of various geographies is personally identifiable information, the regulation on data privacy. So what is it that I can demand for the data that I own, which is managed by various applications, various organizations, right? The organizational data, the business data, the revenue data, the list of customers, there are different types of data that the organization deals with, right? There are nationwide data. All of us would have seen how the Russia-Ukraine war has brought in issues on the security of nation through using utilizing the cyber warfare or cyber threats and all. So these are to be protected from unauthorized access, theft, and damage. Or that means data application should not be damaged. It should be available for our processing. It should provide only authorized access, and we should prevent our assets from getting stolen or getting taken by any unauthorized people or people without knowledge of what has to be done, right? And business continuity. Again, we all know, our generation people know about business continuity much more than any other generation because of the pandemic. So we saw how we provided continuity of services from various areas. Education department, we had remote classes conducted. We had online exams conducted. Banking organizations, hospitals, travel facilities, they had all these ways of managing social distancing, ensuring that the team is spread across various days to provide service, the basic minimum service. So business continuity is something which we all know, right? It is to ensure there is no downtime. That means the services are available as per the agreement. So if the services are promised for 24/7, services should be available 24/7. If they are promised 9 hours for 5 days, it should be available for 9 hours for 5 days, right? So downtime should not be there. Services should be available as it is promised by the organization for their operations, for the services, right? And cybersecurity maintains customer trust by securing personal and financial data. Like I said earlier, if a bank is not promising me that my bank account details will be held without any modification, then I will not become a customer of that bank, right? So the customer trust to that organization is something which is very important for ensuring cybersecurity to the end users. We are the end users as customers, right? For a business, for an application, for a server, for a network, the end users are people connecting to it for processing data or for consuming processed data, right? So the importance of cybersecurity is for the end users, for the businesses, for protecting sensitive information. right? That is why cybersecurity is important. Now, if we look at the various statistics from which all areas were affected by cyber attacks, right? We have taken the data for 2023 and 2024, right? And it is as of March 26, 2024. So even if you are seeing 2024 numbers as less, but this particular data is as of March 26th only. That means the first quarter of 2024, right? So the critical infrastructure saw a total cyber security incidents of 500 in 2023 and 89 in quarter one of 2024. And the state institution and political system saw 376 in 2023 and 82 in 24 quarter one. Education system saw 83 in 2023 and 19 in quarter one of 24. The corporate targets, like the major organizations, they saw 113 in 2023 and 10 in Q1. Media, like the television, the communications, the various media, they saw 29 cyber incidents in 2023 and 5 in quarter one of 24. And the other areas altogether, it was 63 in 23 and 10 in quarter one of 24. So in total, there were 895 reported incidents. What we have to look at here is, these are the incidents which were reported and which European Repository for Cyber Incidents collected from various portals and came out with this dashboard, right? There are many incidents, much more than what is reported, which went unreported. People who got impacted, many of them did not even know that they were impacted. Some of them knew, they did not want to report it because of confidentiality issues, because of credibility issues and all. Many incidents were not reported at all. So this is the reported incident. So you can imagine the extrapolated number from various other organizations where things went without getting reported. So this is the dashboard, and we can see that the critical infrastructure is the top target. So the critical infrastructure is the basic organizations which provide data center services, the cloud services, right? The servers, the network, the internet service provider, the network service provider. Those are all the organizations which get maximum hit using cyber incidents, because the impact of hitting such infrastructure will be huge for many of the businesses or many of the operations. You can see political systems were also impacted. We know that, right? We know how various prime ministers, presidents' Twitter handles were hacked. Various, we even see how deep fake videos are coming with popular political figures, right? So there are impacts or cyber incidents on state institutions and political systems. State institutions means the government portals, the portals which provide insurance supports to various end users, portals which support income tax facility, portals which support various other government-based services, right? Education is also hit in a big way, right? Education systems are also hit in a big way. So this is the data taken from European Repository of Cyber Incidents as of March 26, 2024. And having said that, we will see the way the cyber crimes are increasing across the world, right? So we can see that it is getting skyrocketed. So in 2018, there was only 0.86 trillion US dollar impact due to cyber incident, but in 2028 it is expected to be 13.82 trillion US dollars, right? So the impact of cyber crime, that means the loss due to bringing in, creating data again, bringing up the systems which were shut down, impact of espionage, impact of malicious actors. So all those things, the effect of the cost of cybercrime has become from 0.86 and it is expected to be 13.82 by 2028. In 2024, it was expected to be 9.22 trillion US dollars. So we can see how this is going to be a very important factor for us to design our projects, to build our operations, to start our startups, to set up our COEs, to set up our labs in colleges, to set up different projects for students, for academic purposes, for doing research. For everything, we will be able to see how strengthening cybersecurity becomes a very important factor. Moving forward, we will look at what are threat vectors. I think from the background of the audience, you're all faculty members, right? So you will be able to explain threat vectors in a very good way, because you know how the impact, how the vectors will be, like how the approach to bring down a service, right? So threat is actually something which has to be addressed before it materializes. So a threat is something like which has a possibility of happening, and we bring in controls to ensure that that threat is addressed before it materializes. So threat vector is actually the method cyber criminals use to launch attacks or to access a system without authentication, to hack into the system, to embed a ransomware into the application, to embed a adware or a spyware into the application, to create a picture with a steganography by embedding a message into the picture, right? So they use various mechanisms to launch attacks on a operation, on an application, on the database, which are being used by many people across the world. So these can be internal attacks, which is insider threats, right? So internal attacks are due to lack of education. People will not know what has to be done, what are the do's and don'ts in that environment. So by mistake, they do something which will bring down the system, which will delete the database, right? Or there will be some malicious players in the internal team who will create issues and ensure that there is an outage or there is a lack of availability of data or system or processing, right? That is internal threat. There can be external threats also. External threats are internet-based attacks, which come from various players like hackers. It comes from players like cloud service provider. I mean, I hope all of us know about that blue screen of death, which happened a few months back due to CrowdStrike patching issue. So every system went down. Nobody could work on a day because there was a new release which was done in CrowdStrike application, which was not tested properly. It was not patched properly. And that actually brought the whole system, whole operation to a standstill, right? So that was an internet-based attack. It was not an intentional attack. It was a mistake because of not following processes of testing applications before releasing, right? So there can be these threat vectors, can be external threat vectors. It can be internal threat vectors also. So this, we have to understand the cause of a threat, and then we have to address that threat by putting in the right or taking up the right actions. So if we look at the internal external threat, so internal threat vectors are disgruntled employees stealing sensitive data, right? We know this. We have seen enough movies. We have seen scenarios where somebody, when they leave an organization, they take a copy of sensitive data and they take it to the next organization where they go, right? And especially if they are disgruntled, they go on an unhappy mode from a work. So they have every reason to download the sensitive data from the organization and sell it to the competitors, right? There are many instances where the customer list was stolen and sold off to competitors or sold off to dark web players, right? So that is an internal threat. Another one is accidental data leak. So that is what I said. It is not intentional, but accidental data leak is due to lack of training. We don't know what we should avoid. We don't know what we have to ensure that we are implementing, right? If we don't know that, there will be mistakes happening which will impact the sensitivity of the data that we are dealing with, the confidentiality of the data. So accidental data leak is another internal threat. Now the third one is unauthorized access due to privilege misuse. So there is privilege, right? We know access control. All of us know that. We all know that there is passwords for login. Password has a complexity. We all know that from, say, IRCTC login to internet banking login to mobile banking applications, even applications which we download in mobile for various of our day-to-day operations, right? So we have accesses given, and it is all depending on the role that we play. That means if I am a normal user of an IRCTC system, I will be given a typical access, right? If I am registered as a travel agent, then I will be given another level of access in IRCTC, right? So if I'm a normal user and I am able to escalate my privilege to a travel agent user access, that is called unauthorized access due to privilege misuse, right? So I am actually finding out mechanism to escalate my privilege, right? So an IT admin access and deletes critical files without permission. So IT admin has got an access which is for providing support, the service support to all the end users. So if the IT admin is a disgruntled employee, they access the system and delete all the critical file, then that is due to an internal threat. That is an internal threat where unauthorized access was taken by misusing of privilege, right? So these are examples of internal threat vectors. There are external threat vectors also. I think we have looked into various things as part of external threat. As I told you, the fraud calls that we get, right? You have a delivery in FedEx and you have to give me all these details. You are under digital arrest, right? All those things. You get a call and they ask for an OTP. They say that there will be a message coming in, or they say that you allow me to share screen, right? So those are all external threat factors. So basically, phishing is an external threat thing. So what is phishing? So again, we all know every application that we access, it says, beware of phishing. Don't go and click any link that comes to you through email, through SMS, or through WhatsApp. Look at the source of your information. And if not the source, get into the internet, search for that site and go there separately, but don't click any link that comes with a mail or a communication. That link may take you to a similar looking site and they will steal the login credentials if we try to log in into that system, right? So that is a phishing attack. So we have to be very, very clear about not getting impacted by phishing attacks. And There is another one called DDoS attacks. There is denial of service attack. There is distributed denial of service attacks. When internet was not this much used, there was a denial of service. That means there is a service that is promised. Like, we will take something very simple, an ATM machine. An ATM machine promises us disbursal of money. So if you go to ATM machine and they say that there is, it is closed, we have to reload money. That is denial of service, right? So distributed denial of service means some application being embedded or some malware being embedded into your network, which will create denial of service from multiple points, or you will have multiple hits which will bring down the system completely, right? So it is like a hacker overloads a company's website, causing downtime. So the website will not come at all because it is continuously hit from various areas, and because of which it becomes unavailable for normal users also. So that is distributed denial of service, right? There is the external threat is again malware infection. So we all know virus. We know that we should have antivirus in our system. We know about ransomware. We had heard about WannaCry. Many of you who have done or who were working in computer science domain or cybersecurity area would have heard about a ransomware called WannaCry, right? So there are malwares which get infected into our system through malicious email attachments, or if we try to connect a USB drive to the system, if we try to use a CD into our system to copy something, right? So infection happens through all these things. So if an employee opens an attachment or copies something into the system without understanding, there is a possibility that the network will be hit with ransomware. Now, what is a ransomware? A ransomware is a malware which asks for a ransom, right? We will see that. Going forward, we will see what is ransomware. So these are examples of external threats. So there are internal threats, there are external threats. So we have to be very clear about what is external threats and how we have to address them, right? We understand the threat vector. We understand how this attack can happen, or how an attacker is trying to focus our system. So we should be proactive enough in building in controls in our system to prevent, right? How do we do that? We will have data leakage prevention systems. We will have virus scanning systems where whenever some data is downloaded or whenever some data is copied, right? We should have mechanisms of ensuring that multiple pings will not happen to a website or an application beyond a point, right? We should limit the number of pings to an application. So there has to be some controls built in. That is what cybersecurity is all about, right? Now, what are the attack methodologies, right? So phishing. What is phishing? It's a fake email from a bank requesting account verification and stealing of login credentials. Even now, we get mail saying that this mail is from hello Jyoti Ramaswamy, we are coming to you from State Bank of India, or we are coming to you from ICICI. There is we are doing credential verification. So can you click in this particular link and give your identification, re-verify, KYC verification is happening, right? We keep getting such mails even now, right? Even now, there are people who get impacted because they think it is like, suppose I am waiting for a loan approval, or suppose I am waiting to make a payment tomorrow to a service provider of mine which has got a hard stop or a timeline by tomorrow, right? Then I feel, okay, I have to do this, otherwise my work will get impacted or my service will get impacted. So I do it without thinking, right? So phishing is actually a fraudulent attempt to get sensitive information, and it comes to us as an entity which looks very similar to a correct one. So what they say is, we have to verify if there are any spell checks, if what is the email ID that comes from. It says it will be from ICICI Bank, but it comes from, say, cars and jeeps.com, right? It will be coming from such a domain. So we will have to look at the email ID to understand whether it is a fake email or a correct email before we take any action. And even if we have to take action, suppose we had to, I mean, there is a timeline for password expiry for my application. So I will have to forget about that email. I will have to go into the website through my normal mechanism and then update my password. I shouldn't fall into that phishing attack, right? The second one is DDoS. So DDoS is what we were talking about. By pinging one application from multiple sources or from thousands of sources. Multiple doesn't mean it is 10 or 15 or anything. From thousands of sources, one application is pinged, or access comes to an application. Mostly it is through internet-based attacks. Can you go on mute, please? Yeah. So mostly it is through internet-based attacks. So we have to ensure that there is no flood of request to a site. Basically, it is e-commerce sites which go through this, right? Facebook had an issue some time back where it was down, WhatsApp was down, right? So these are called botnet attacks also. What is a bot? A bot is an application which looks similar to a actual customer addressing or accessing, right? So if there are multiple bots connected into a network, and from them they try to ping this, connect to this, access this application, that creates a distributed denial of service. And then there is malware, which we talked about, like virus, ransomware, trojans, right? So the malware is like malicious software designed to disrupt our system or application. So it will shut down the system, or it will even delete the data, or it will corrupt the data, right? Some of this ransomware, what they do is they enter into the application and they encrypt the data. So when they encrypt, the data becomes unusable, right? So a Trojan horse, which comes as a legitimate application, it collects all the data and it encrypts the data, and it comes back to us with a pop-up saying that if you want to access your data, you have to pay us in bitcoins, or you have to pay us in cryptocurrency, right? That is what a ransomware is. So malwares are things which get attached to an actual application, actual software, but it actually disrupts the operation, or it shuts down the operation, or it encrypts the data so that data becomes unusable, right? So these are the attack methodologies. Yeah, ransomware is what we were talking about now. WannaCry. If you are not familiar with WannaCry, just request you to go through that, have a look at that in Google to understand what was WannaCry. How many organizations were impacted due to this particular malware, right? Now, social engineering, this is another very important thing, right? Social engineering is because, like, it is misusing the trust that we have due to the psychological aspects and then getting data from us. So manipulating individuals to get confidential data from them is called social engineering, right? So somebody calling from a IT support, saying that, or somebody calling pretending to be a support desk, asking for login credentials so that they can create this particular, they can help with the ticket that we have raised, or they will say, like we have seen in movies, the one person comes in saying that your telephone, you had a problem, so you had reported, I came to troubleshoot that. They come in and they put in something, they put in a screening device, right? So social engineering is all that thing, manipulating human beings by getting information or getting access to information is social engineering. Now, another one is man in the middle attack, right? All this hacking things that we talk about are all man in the middle. That means one data has to go from source to destination. In between, there is always somebody who tries to come in the middle and then take that data, intercepts and take the data. It can be that the man in the middle is just observing the communication. It can also be that the man in the middle is coming in and modifying the data and giving wrong information. Both can happen. Again, whenever I am saying all these things, you can relate to the different things that we have seen in various areas like movies or stories, or even technical papers where this type of data is possible. So if you remember, if you have seen that man in the middle attack representation, they say that there are two people sitting and discussing, Smith and Joe. There is a third person who comes in and who listens, right? There are certain things where the attacker eavesdrop. They don't do anything. They just listen and then capture all the information, and that information will be used at some other instance. So we will never know where that information was taken from, right? How that information reached that person's hands, we will never know. So that is man in the middle attack, right? An attacker eavesdrops on a public Wi-Fi network. Again, this is one thing which all of us have to know, and we have to teach our students, we have to tell our children that a public Wi-Fi is never safe. So please don't log into all the places, in the malls, in everywhere where in a coffee shop, wherever there is public Wi-Fi available. Ensure that you are not logging into public Wi-Fi. Unless there is a authentication mechanism, don't log in. Many of the airports, they have an authentication mechanism where they ask you to get into the browser and give your boarding card number, or give your airline's number and all, right? A free connection is always risky. It may lead to man in the middle attack, right? So these are the type of attacks that we have to look at. Again, application-based issues. SQL injections. What is SQL injections? Like SQL is related to database, right? So how a malicious query can be put in along with an authorized query to gather information, especially in today's world where personally identifiable information has to be secured, has to be managed with maximum security. If somebody is putting in an added query, right? Now, if they get some additional information which will leak the end user's personal information, that is called a SQL injection. So what hackers do, all these things, they don't come instance by instance. They create a script. Hackers create scripts so that this SQL injection at one point gets a large quantity of data. By querying the database, they get a large quantity of data at one go, with which they will be able to reach out to the organization and demand ransom or demand any other services or anything. So how can you avoid SQL injection? Again, we will see that in the coming classes. So there are mechanisms by which we will have to understand that there is a possibility, if we have written a query using this particular technical stack, we have to use this coding standard or this best practice and all. So we have to avoid mechanisms which will help hackers insert malicious queries into actual query when we deal with databases. That is SQL injection. What is zero-day exploit? What is zero-day? On one fine day, the application stops, or the application vendor stops support. Like Windows, if you take. Currently, we are all using Windows 10 or Windows 11. So there were earlier versions of Windows, right? So that go out of support, right? It goes out of support, and on one fine day, they will lose support, and otherwise there will be issues which are identified by hackers before the designers identify the solution. That is called zero-day, right? End of life is one thing, zero-day exploit is another thing. End of life support is one thing, wherein the solution goes out of support. So if there is any issue coming to that solution, that application, there will be no solution, because the software vendor, like if in case of Microsoft, in case of Windows, Microsoft says that I will not support this version. In case of Android, the Android vendor says that this particular version goes out of support, so I will not provide support, right? Or it's a new version, but the solution, the issue has not been identified till now. So that the undiscovered issue causes an attack. That is called zero-day exploit, right? So there is a vulnerability in the system which was not identified by the designer, the owner of the system. That is getting attacked is called zero-day exploit. So there are, if you will, we will have to imagine that if we put an application in internet, there are various players trying to access that internet application, trying to test it. They are trying to do penetration testing of that application to identify vulnerabilities, and before that is patched, they attack, right? That is called zero-day exploit. So these are also various types of attack methodologies, right? So if we look at some of the case studies, one case study is from one of the MNCs in IT services business, Infosys. Infosys had a lawsuit by which they had to, the fine that was to be paid was $17.5 million US, right? What was the issue? What was the risk or the threat that was utilized by the threat vector? Is actually unauthorized activity. It happened between October 29th and November 2nd of 2023. It was a ransomware attack. It was identified only at a later point, right? The threat actor gained access to company's system and encrypted data and made it inaccessible, or rather, that is what I said. Ransomware attacks, what they do is they bring down the system, they encrypt the data, they bring down the system and make it not reachable or not available, right? So it impacts, other than C and I, it impacts the availability, and they bring down the system. So imagine if it was a emergency system, like supporting a airport or supporting an airlines, or it is something which support a hospital, right? It was an emergency, or utilities like electricity service or water authorities. So if the system becomes unavailable, lot of end users will lose the services promised by that customer, right? So Infosys is an organization which provides IT services to another organization which has end customers. So this ransomware actually made the end customers of another customer, a client of Infosys, lose their application due to a ransomware which occurred between October 29th and November 2nd of 2023, right? So this is something which has gone through the various phases of cyber crime and investigation and all these things. So who are the affected clients here? The affected client was, there were many banking customers affected, like Bank of America, with approximately 57,000 customers' personal information compromised. So suppose I am a customer of Bank of America and I give my social security number in the system, right? And this ransomware goes and encrypts that social security number, or modifies that social security number, or deletes that social security number. So any benefit that I have to get will get impacted, right? So 57,000 people's personal information was compromised due to this ransomware. And there is always there are promises given by banking organizations to the end customers. They are given in small letters. So many a time we may not have read all that and understood it. But if any such thing happens, we should know that these are our rights. We have rights on our information. We have rights to ensure that the data that are there, that are managed by the banks, which are our personal data, we have every right to ask them, make them liable, right? So the breach led to financial losses for Infosys, which is revenue loss, restoration cost, legal expense, and investigation effort. So if there is a problem, there will be investigation effort, and there will be opportunity loss because the system is down and it is not functioning, so revenue is lost. If we have to bring that system back, there is restoration cost, right? So all these together created a huge loss for Infosys and a loss for Bank of America and customers of Infosys, where the personal information was compromised. So this is one of the case studies which shows us how cybersecurity is important, why some of the controls which we feel as very stringent controls help us secure our data in the right way to prevent such breach of data, etc. Right? So this is one of the case study that is available in the public domain. Now, after going through the different threats and all, we will look at what are the security frameworks, how we can put in controls, what are the different industry standards which help us design and implement controls, right? So why do we need frameworks? So what are frameworks? Again, we know, right? Suppose I am constructing a house. I will know that a door has to be basically of this size. A window has to be of this size. A window has to be here. So those are some basic frameworks. So frameworks always help us with best practices across industries. It helps us to know which are the ones which have proven records, which are tested and proven, right? So we will be gaining by using such tested and proven records. Those are frameworks. So they are across industries, or they are industry specific. See, banking and financial services. So in India, a banking and financial services company has to follow RBI guidelines. So that is a framework which banking and financial services put in place, right? In India, data privacy has got a DPDP Act which is required by Government of India. So that is a framework. There are international frameworks like ISO standards. There are IEEE standards, right? From engineering background, all of us will know about various IEEE standards. So those are frameworks which help us do things in the right way, right? So security frameworks also help us to create things in the most secured manner, right? So these help us ensure best practices, and these help us adhere to regulatory requirement. So regulations are due to law of the land, or due to the criticality of the services or the nuances of the services, right? In suppose in medical industry, right? In the medical area, this back office operation, the transcribing, medical transcribing brought in a new risk. The data of a person's medical history was actually transferred in a voice format, which was transcribed into text from another place, right? So that brought in a new risk to the regulations. So we have to ensure how these regulations can be followed. And some of the frameworks help us reduce the risk. That's what I said. Understand the existing risk. Understand what was tested. Understand to bring in visibility to new threats or new risk which can come through, right? By doing that, we put in, again, good security measures. For an example, like this, backups, right? When we had that World Trade Center issue, that Twin Tower, which was a hit of World Trade Center, there were many organizations which went out of business because their backup offices, their office was in one of the Twin Tower, their backup office was in the other Twin Tower. So both of the primary and secondary offices were destroyed, right? So the standard, the security framework brought in a requirement saying that the secondary location, right, a backup location should at least be 50 miles from the primary location, so that any natural or man-made issue impacting the primary location will not impact the secondary location, and we can come back or we can bring back our services with the secondary location, right? So by following security frameworks, we can learn from what happened and we can bring in process improvement also. So security frameworks are required to ensure best practices, to ensure compliance to regulations, to reduce the risk by following tested practices, right? And to ensure that we are improving our processes. Process improvement is one of a very important requirement of all the framework, of all the processes. So how can we improve our processes? Now, what are the different security frameworks in cybersecurity? In cybersecurity framework, the different ones that we have to look at, the main one, which is ISO 27001. ISO is International Standards Organization. So ISO has got different standards. ISO 9001 is for quality management service. ISO 20000 is for IT service management. Like that, 27001 is for information security management. So many enterprises, before they decide whom they have to give a work, right? They have to outsource a work to somebody, or they have to procure a service from somebody. They look at whether that organization is ISO 27001 certified or not, right? So ISO 27001 is for information security management system. So information security management system has got various aspects of cybersecurity and information security. So cybersecurity is for security in digital, security of information in digital format. Information security is for all format, like physical security also comes in ISMS, right? So ISO 27001 talks about how we have to look at physical security, how we have to look at environmental security, right? The fire management system, right? The fire drills that are to be conducted, the evacuation drills, the UPS, the diesel generator, to ensure continuity of power supply, right? all those things come under ISMS. So ISO 27001 gives actually various controls that are to be put in place to secure operations of a organization, right? So ISO 27001 lists the controls, and what they say is you have to, as an organization, we have to create what is called a statement of applicability, SOA. So statement of applicability says that of the 157, 100 and odd controls, these are applicable to me, these are not applicable to me, right? Suppose I am a fully remotely functioning organization, then physical security is not applicable to me because I don't have an office, right? I don't have to worry about visitor management. I don't have to worry about security guards. I don't have to worry about fire management, fire security, right? So the ISO 27001 actually helps us to define our security controls, keeping the business goals in mind and looking at what are the controls which are applicable to us, what are the controls which are not applicable to us because we are not managing business in that particular domain, right? So we have technology controls, we have people controls, we have organizational controls, we have physical security controls. So depending on how we are organized, right, we will decide which controls are applicable to us. So 27001 beautifully explains or helps us define an ISMS which will help us address all the threats, right? It will, this 27001's latest version called 2022 version, it starts with risk management. That means we identify what are the potential threats which can cause a risk in my operation, and we list down all those risks, right? And we bring in controls to manage that risk, to reduce the risk or to remove the risk, right? So 27001 helps us to do risk management, to bring in compliance, and to put in processes, procedures, and the statement of applicability, etc., to ensure that our end-to-end operation happens without any impact to C, I, or A of operation, right? That is what ISO 27001 does. The second standard framework that we are looking at will be the NIST cybersecurity framework, right? NIST is the organization which again gives, like ISO, it has frameworks for almost all the processes. It has artificial intelligence framework also. It has frameworks for medical devices, pharma devices. It has frameworks for manufacturing area. It has like ISO itself. So it has, NIST has a cybersecurity framework. So the cybersecurity framework again here divides the whole operations into the ways where you identify the risk, you respond to the risk, you react to the risk, and then you put in a governance around all those things, right? So the cybersecurity framework helps us to manage the risk due to cybersecurity. It is cybersecurity. It is not information security like ISO 27001, right? It talks more about the technology controls, though we can use that for our people risk, the physical risk also. So this helps us to bring in a risk-based approach to identify risk, to remediate risk, to respond to risk, and to put in a governance structure in all that, the complete cycle of managing the control, right? And the third one is COBIT. COBIT is a framework which is designed by an international organization like IEEE called ISACA. So COBIT is Control Objectives for Information and Related Technologies. So COBIT is again a a more comprehensive framework, right? So it helps us in developing, monitoring, and improving practices. So we can design practices, we can implement those practices, we can monitor and improve. So how do you improve a process? There is something called the PDCA model, right? We will see that going forward also. I'm just touching upon here. Plan, do, check, and act. So what is plan? So we identify what are to be developed, how to implement. That's a plan. Do is we actually implement. Now what is check? Check is monitoring. It's actually the feedback mechanism due to monitoring. And based on that, the output of the check phase, we will be able to improve. That is the act. So the frameworks, all these frameworks are actually designed using PDCA mechanisms. So COBIT is a framework which again helps us to build practices for our operations to reduce cybersecurity threats or to remove, right, cybersecurity threats. So these are industry-based standards. There are some more like CIS. CIS is Center for Internet Security. If you look at the controls of CIS, that also is a very comprehensive list. They give us complete technology controls that are to be put in before we host an application in internet, right? The CIS controls look at everything from basic access control to backup to patching to failover mechanisms, everything. So the CIS control is again, it's a prioritized set of processes to address known threats, right? So before we migrate an application from intranet into internet, right? I don't know how many of you can visualize or look back for the details where we were working in a bank where it was ledger-based banking operations. So if I have to withdraw money, I have to go to the bank where I have an account, right? If I give a check to another branch, then I have to wait till that check goes to my base branch and gets cleared and come back. So from there, when banking operations, the application was moved into internet, it became very easy for accessing from anywhere, right? So those are, that is a scenario where the application is hosted for access from various points in the internet. So the CIS controls help us to implement security controls to ensure that accesses from various points in the internet are secure or are managed, right? Then comes GDPR. I mentioned about the Data Privacy Act of India. So GDPR is a data privacy act which is for European Union. That means the countries which are in Europe continent, right, which form this European Union, they have a common regulation to protect personally identifiable information, and that is called GDPR. GDPR is very, very important in cyber world because if there is a breach on personal data, then the fine on the data processor is huge. The organization which manages the data, which processes the data, the fine, the penalty on that organization is huge. That is why GDPR is a very important framework that all of us have to be aware of, right? There is another US law called HIPAA. HIPAA is actually a subset of personally identifiable information, but it is health-based only. It is not a credit information, or it is not something related to my banking information or anything, but it is health insurance information, right? So HIPAA compliance is required for all the application owners, for anybody who comes into contact with data which is related to health insurance of US customers, it's a US law. So it is again, as I told you, GDPR is a European Union law. So these are laws of the land. So these are having boundaries for applications or for personal data which are owned by customers of this particular geographical area only. So HIPAA is again a very important framework which has to be followed. The compliance to HIPAA is mandatory for organizations which develop application for healthcare industry, for insurance organizations and all. So HIPAA compliance is again mandatory. Like that, PCI DSS is another framework for payment card industry. Again, I would like to bring in a example here. Around 10-15 years back, when we started using ATM cards, credit cards and all, initially the charge slip that we used to get used to show the 12 digits of the card in that charge slip, right? And that was misused rampantly. So that is when the payment card industry brought in a standard for data security, and that data security, the controls are for handling card data. So once PCI DSS was implemented, the card owners like Visa, Master, Amex and all, they ensured that for any transaction, only the last 4 digits of the card number will be visible. All other numbers will be encrypted, right? Like that, PCI DSS had a lot of controls for managing payment card industry. So payment card can be debit card, credit card, prepaid cards. There are many cards which are used for payment industry, right? For paying. So we have that point of sale device which we use in the petrol bunks. We use in the various retail organizations and all. So if we give our card for swiping, then we should know that these are the controls that are supposed to be put in there. So this is what again we have to know as a user, that the proximity access given on the cards. Currently all of us use chip cards, right? Chip cards, we can enable proximity access. So we have to configure that. There is a control already in place, but we have to configure that. So if I am using tap service in my card, it is my responsibility to ensure that I am limiting the tap service to say 2,000 rupees or 5,000 rupees, right? So I know that if that is used, if I am using my card for petrol, then I can buy for up to 2,000 and use it without a PIN, right? So we should understand these type of data security standards that are put in payment card industry. So that is another security framework. Then comes SOC 2. SOC 2 is a very important framework. It actually brings in compliance for organizations which are listed in US share market. SOC 2 came in from a compliance called Sarbanes-Oxley compliance, SOX compliance, right? The SOX compliance was for organizations which are listed in US share market to ensure data can be trusted, right? The transaction can be trusted. That means you have controls in place to prevent unauthorized modification, right? So when SOX compliance has to be put on the service provider, it becomes SOC 2 compliance. So a SOC 2 framework it works on 5 trust service principles, which is security, availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, and privacy. So what is security? You are securing the data. So data is encrypted when at rest in database, when in transit, when it is being transmitted from source to destination. So security. What is availability? You ensure that there is a backup available, data is available when you require, it is easily available based on the promises that are given. That is availability. What is processing integrity? Suppose it is my banking application itself, right? And I am doing a deposit, right? So the bank has to process it as a deposit. That is processing integrity. So at every instance of transaction, the integrity of transaction has to be maintained. There should not be any mistake in the processing. That is processing integrity. Confidentiality, of course, as we talked about PCI DSS, we talked about the GDPR and all. Wherever confidentiality of data has to be maintained, it has to be maintained. Privacy. Privacy is for personal data only. Confidentiality is for all type of data which has to be managed. Privacy is for personal data, right? And in India, like GDPR, the data privacy is actually DPDP Act, which was released in 2023. So India's law for protecting digital private personal data is called DPDP Act. So currently, the government is implementing DPDP Act in all the places. So educational institutions are part of it, right? There are controls that are brought in by government to manage young children's, younger people's or minor personal's data, right? They have to be managed with consent from parent also. They bring in lot of controls, right? For processing, for storage, and for providing rights. So if I'm having data of a 15-year-old person, then I should know that for processing that data, I should have got the consent from an adult, a parent, or a legally named sponsor of that minor, right? So DPDP Act and GDPR and wherever privacy of data is managed, we have to look at how to bring in controls on processing, storage, and managing personal data, right? And in total, there is IT Act also. There is IT Act. I think all of us have read various instances of IT Act implementation, violation of IT Act, breach of IT Act, the various acts which brings in visibility into the transactions that happen in the IT domain, right? IT Act is India's legislation to address cybercrime and electronic commerce. So like today when we started, we had a session by Dr. Sanjay Bahal. He is actually heading the institution called CERT. So that they manage the incidents which are reported, right? They will bring in how to manage the cybersecurity incidents, right? And there are governmental bodies like MeitY, like various organizations which ensure IT Act 2000 is used for managing incidents in the cyber domain or in the digital domain. Now, we have to look at emerging technologies. We talked about, or we looked into a few pointers in emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, zero trust. We also have to look at wearables, right? That is another emerging technologies. You know about wearables, like, right? We talked about IoT systems. We talked about embedded systems. So now these medical devices, which can be put on to the patient's body as a wearable, and that can be monitored, right? So those are all things which come as new technologies, emerging technologies, right? Artificial intelligence is a big fish, right? We looked into deep fake videos. We looked into how the data itself is modified, or it is completely changed by artificial intelligence based things, right? We looked into robots which learn and become smarter. We have driverless vehicles. We have machines. We have robots in manufacturing areas which learn, which go as per the programs that are written into it. Those are used for managing, right? So emerging technologies bring in new threats in cybersecurity, because all these emerging technologies also work in interconnected domain, right? So that is where cybersecurity becomes very important in usage of these things like AI driven detection mechanisms, zero trust architecture, quantum cryptography. Like quantum computing is a big step, right? How to manage, like we were talking about big data some time back. Now big data is obsolete. We are talking about machine language, we are talking about quantum computing, quantum cryptography, that much volume of thing. So those are the new technology which we have to adapt to. See, we cannot say that we will always remain with older designs, older architecture, and we will never go into newer technologies. That is not a solution. So how can we implement these emerging technologies? By putting in controls around, by putting in defense mechanisms to ensure that there are good governance mechanisms, good risk management mechanisms, and there are controls around how to processes which are built in, right? Which help us to be proactive, right? We identify potential risk and we put in controls around it. We don't wait for something to happen and react to it, but we become proactive. So that is what we have to do. So we have to look at, there are various other things. If you again go into the literature in cybersecurity, there are behavioral analytics, right? User behavior analytics is one area of cybersecurity which says how users have to be trained, or how users' behaviors have to be positively utilized, or how users' behaviors have to be tuned to reduce the risk, right? To remove that phishing things, social engineering things and all. So behavioral analytics is something. Deception technology, again, how the technology can be deceiving, right? How technology can bring in, like phishing, how technology can bring in mechanisms to duplicate or to gather trust from the end user. So we have to look at how to address deception technology, how to provide secure access services, right? So currently we have all this software as a service, platform as a service, security as a service, right? So how we can provide secure access as a service, right? So we have various identity and access access management tools which help us to provide security access mechanisms as a service, right? So all these mechanisms help organizations to predict, to prevent, and to respond to attacks that may come in place. So what is predicting? There are threat intelligence mechanisms, right? We talked about threat vectors. So there are mechanisms which will give us intelligence on this can be a potential threat coming in. That is threat intelligence. So there are tools which can predict the threat, right? Once it is predicted, we can have processes or we can have other tools to prevent them, right? We can also have mechanisms to respond to any incidents which are reported, which are identified, right? So emerging technologies, we have to be careful. We have to be very prudent or diligent about identifying, predicting, preventing, and responding attacks in real time. So that is what we have to look at. Now, for protection, how AI can be used. So there are AI-powered threat detection systems. So we talked about threat intelligence, right? There are threat detection systems. So what is AI-powered means? The system can learn by itself. So if we say that one behavior is actually a anomaly, then the system, the AI learns and then it finds out similar behavior. As an example, I will tell you, the government or the Supreme Court ordered the mobile service provider that spam calls have to be blocked, right? So what are mobile service providers doing? Suppose we get a call, they are showing it as a potential spam, right? They are identifying that as an anomaly depending on the number of calls that go from that number, that particular contact, right? Number of calls, the volume of calls that go from that number is identified, and then it is tagged as a spam, right? It can be a potential spam. After we address that call, the mobile service provider asks us whether it was a delivery service, whether it was a spam, right? And we mark it as a spam. And then the AI in the mobile service provider learns it, right? They identify that anomaly, and suppose I am having a 7-digit number which I have marked as a spam, the AI will learn to change the last digit into 3-4 combinations, and it will mark all those things as spams, right? So that is what is detection, which is AI powered, and then anomaly identification, which can work faster than the normal manual or a tool-based one-by-one way. So AI helps in threat detection system, which is a very faster way of detection and extrapolation also, right? And machine learning models. Machine learning is actually where huge volumes of data can be analyzed to identify patterns. So from the data in the actual form, it is being brought down to machine language forms where it is easier to analyze huge volumes of data, right? We had learned about supercomputers, we have learned about systems which could process tons of data. So like that, machine learning models can also do that. They can process tons of data, which will enable threat prevention. So they can process data quickly and they can identify threats, and we can build in processes to prevent recurrence of such things happening, right? That is how AI can be brought into cybersecurity. Now, AI enhances endpoint security. Endpoints like our laptops, our mobile devices, our point of sale devices, our televisions, right? Now, televisions are also Android-based televisions, which we connect over Wi-Fi to our router. So the internet service provider. So the endpoint security is enhanced by AI through filtering, through monitoring, and through behavioral analytics. So what is behavioral analytics? Behavioral analytics is where it is actually identifying how a particular instance of occurrence can be addressed, right? A particular instance of occurrence can be identified as a risky occurrence, as a BAU, business as usual activity, or as a very rare activity, and then the behavior or the response on that can be defined based on the type of activity that is identified. Now, this SOAR is again another framework which has to be used for incident response, right? So this is called security orchestration, automation, and response. Again, this is a very it's a very upcoming area, or rather, I will not say upcoming. It was upcoming of a couple of years back, but currently it is a very stable area where these incidents are looked into for analyzing, understanding, and response can be automated. So those are SOAR platforms. So they will reduce the human workload and improve reaction. If you go back into the movies that you have seen and all, you will know that the security operations centers are where there will be big monitors and people will be sitting there and monitoring that to see if there are any alerts which come as red pop-ups, right? So these SOAR tools will help reduce that human workload of looking at it and identifying that pop-ups, and then reporting that as an incident, taking it to the next level, looking at actions, and then closing that and all. So the reaction time is also reduced, and the platform automates. It responds in an automated way, right? So the protection is improved by bringing in artificial intelligence in cybersecurity. Now, how is AI in cybersecurity goes into weaponization? Weaponization means how it helps the attackers, right? So AI actually scales up attacks, because if it is helping us to protect, the same AI will help hackers also to get higher and huge impact on attacks also. So AI automates and scales up attacks also with highly personalized content based on data which are harvested. So AI application can reside. There are things called there are things which are persistent threats, right? They will persist in the application for a long time, observing, and then they will harvest data. So that data is used to scale up attacks. So AI can help in weaponizing that way. Attackers can use AI to again bypass security systems. We looked into distributed denial of service, right? So if an attacker is using an AI module, that DDoS attack can be made 100 times more powerful, because AI will learn a lot and AI will automate a lot of things, and the attacker can utilize it for continuously improving the attack strategy, right? AI can create deep fakes. I think we know about deep fakes because that was in the news for a long time now. And there is voice cloning tools which are available, which will help impersonate individuals, right? AI-driven malware can autonomously find vulnerabilities and exploit them faster than human hackers. So that is how AI is used. So after looking at how the emerging technology and the relationship of AI with cybersecurity, I think with that, we are coming to the end of today's session. We will open the forum for any questions or any discussion or any observation like we mentioned in the first place.